Full practices have been taken care of. Full pads last Friday. You take a week off. They'll come back and hit the practice field. I think Tuesday the 25th is the next time that they practice. But overall, Brent Hubbs, what's been a big takeaway that you've had from what you've seen so far for Tennessee spring practice?
I'm going to give you four right off the top, right quick. Okay. One is, I think the kind of the confidence and the relaxation of Nico. Not just in his media setting, but I've seen Nico walking through the complex more in 4 practices than I have in 2 years. Like he's just been strolling through, and he's been very engaging with people.
What's it mean, though, Hubbs?
I just think I don't know what it ultimately means. I think he's a little bit more settled into who he is.
Does he have the look in his eye?
No, I just like the way. I mean, listen, the guy went out the back door for 2 years, right? And he's not doing that. I like the way he's carried himself right now. I have no idea what that means in terms of whether or not they're going to connect on deep balls or anything like that. But I do like the way he's carried himself. I think Tennessee got exactly what you would hope they would get with the 2 offensive guard transfers. Those guys act like, carry themselves like plug and play guys at the guard spot. How could you not enjoy Pendleton's interview? And I think Wendell Moy, I think those guys are exactly what you're hoping you would find with the whole transfer situation that you got into. I like what Braylon Staley has done to start, and talking to some people. I think Braylon's had a nice start to camp. How does that translate when you get into pads and scrimmages and all those things? We'll find out. Like the way he looks out there. And then I like what Josh Heupel's done with his coaching staff. I mean, I think Seth Luttrell's a really nice set of eyes that can help you there. And clearly Tim Banks has a lot of confidence in Alan Williams and has really kind of let him run in individual drills with the safeties and be a part of there. Of course, obviously Coach Chop with the outside linebackers. So those are my 4 quick hot takeaways right there.
AP, Hubbs is all about the flashy toys, right? I did mention defense one time.
Yeah, I did. I mentioned Alan Williams right there.
Okay, sure. Well, part of the coaching staff.
I mentioned that. I mean, here's the thing. Like, look, it says something that Rodney Garner, Rob, is complimenting 2 freshmen that they can take his coaching style. But I think all of us agree, and AP jump in here too. I mean, I like everything about Isaiah Campbell in terms of what he can be. I like everything about Ethan Utley and what he can be. And that's just a hard position to be really good at out of the gate. Now, they're going to have to play and be a part of that rotation, but I like all those guys, but I don't know about what kind of early impact they're going to make on this football team in 25.
Well, I think physically you come in the door, better than most, right?
Yeah, Utley's got to get bigger, man.
Campbell does, yeah.
He does, yes. But I'm with Hubbs. I mean, it's easy to fall in love with people right now. It's April. Or not even April yet. It's March. It's spring practice. And so what's the chatter out there come August? Because again, the last couple of years, the guys that you started to hear chatter on in spring, the ones that actually made it through to actually playing real factored snaps in the fall were the ones you kept hearing about through May, through June, through July. And they just kept talking about them. They kept talking about them. Who are they continuing to talk about? A lot of people, 2 years ago, people talked about John Slaughter here in bowl practice and in spring practice like Ronnie Lott. And we've yet to ever see John Slaughter. So, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I
don't disagree.
Whereas
I'm still waiting on John Slaughter.
So,
because of your war room paragraph, AP, I think.
Was not mine.
You told me to write it.
No. But I mean, my biggest takeaways is there are some young pieces on this team that I think could really go boom. We're not going to know it. It's going to quote the great Derek Dooley, they're going to water the bamboo, and we'll see if the bamboo grows. Boom, that's what's going to happen with some of these young guys. And I don't mean the Utleys and Campbells. I'm talking Spillman. I'm talking about Matthews, Staley. I mean, these are unproven players to this point on the field. Like, they can do it in practice, and that's all good, and that starts there. But it's going to take till September to go, man, that kid actually really good, because you're going against different competition. So that's where I'm at with it through spring. It's like, you want to continue to hear good things. That's what you want to hear, because if you're not hearing it, then that's not good.
Well, I think Eric, the other thing too, when you look at this roster, is in years past, for example, last year, Mike Matthews, but you looked up and you said, well, Brew McCoy's ahead of him.
Yep.
They brought in Chris Brazzell, Dante Thornton's here, Squirrel White's here. So it was easy to fall in love with Mike Matthews for making plays, Eric, but you also looked at the roster and said, well, there's a lot of veteran guys in front of him that have proven themselves. When you look at this roster this spring, there's a lot of youth, and then there's a lot more youth. I mean, some of these guys that are generating some buzz as young players have to play. Maybe not Campbell as much and Utley as much, but somebody's going to have to play, at the receiver position, and somebody's going to have to step up and be the third tight end in this offense and a young linebacker. I mean, they just have to play because there's not a bunch of veterans in front of them. This is going to be a pretty young football team. So it is a little different when you look at the roster depth this spring compared to last spring, Eric.
Which goes back, Eric, to what we talked about in December and January, when there was the gnashing of teeth that Tennessee wasn't heavy in the portal. And what did we say? Last year's version of, got to rotate more is this year's version of, you put a bunch of money into these young players in NIL, they've got to play. And so they didn't go to the portal real heavy. They're going to say, hey, you're making a big chunk of money in NIL. You've got to play. They're going to push these kids to the field. It goes to receiver. It goes to the offensive line. It goes to several different positions. And I think that's what Hubs is talking about with the youth that is going to be pushed onto the field, because that's kind of been the battle cry, I think, within the building for the last couple of months.
Yeah, and I mean, what does Tennessee look like at cornerback, a couple of weeks from now? We talk about, is Tennessee going to go and get another cornerback in the transfer portal? Spring practice will answer that. Dylan Lewis has been behind Boo Carter at star. You had Trey Petit at corner, and, Ty Redmond at corner, and some of these younger guys. What do they look like as spring practice continues on in full pads? I mean, everybody looks good in shorts. What do these guys look like a week or two from now is what I'm intrigued by. But you got there, and on the offensive line, I mean, of course, David Sanders, and you can't hear a bad word about him right now from his – I've written about it every day. You got to have a David Sanders report from a technical standpoint and feet and hand placement and all that. I mean, he looks great. What's he look like when he's trying to block Joshua Josephs coming around to sack your quarterback? We're going to find that answer out, over the next couple of weeks when they get back on campus in full pads. So, yeah, I mean, these young players, there's no choice. They're going to have to step up. They're going to have to play. They're going to be better for it as well. Moving on throughout, their careers and on into the next year as well. We don't care about that right now. We care about 2025. But I'm excited to see kind of how all these guys transpire. And, take William Satterwhite as well. Talk about the two transfer guards. I wouldn't say Satterwhite's locked down the center position, but everybody who spoke last week, at least on the offensive line or on offense, referred to Sat as the center, taking over for Coop. And, he's not Coop, but he's not a newbie. And, this is Sat's job to lose and all that and more. So, I mean, he's another one of those young guys I kind of put in this category. It's going to have to step up and play. So that's definitely a storyline this year.
Yeah, I think the other thing for me right quick, Rob, is you kind of lean towards what players say. No offense to coaches, because coaches are giving coach speak, Rob. But when you talk to people privately, you talk to people on camera and everything, Boo Carter's name continues to show up. People keep talking about Boo Carter and what little bit he's shown at, on offense with the work that he's done there, and obviously where he's at. I think his step from year one to year two is going to be really interesting to watch, and how much will this staff really turn him loose kind of as a two-way player and what all they can do there, because I think he's hit the ground running on offense and a little bit of work based on what players say. And players typically, if they're talking about somebody, Rob, that guy's making an impression on them.
Well, and players typically don't do what Boo did as a freshman in the SEC either, which is, immediately just pop. I'm not saying he, had it all figured out, but it'd be 2 or 3 times a game where just whiz bang, who was that moving so fast, or doing that or making that hit, or like Georgia. Georgia didn't give up anything in the punt return game at all last year. And what Boo popped one for 34 yards in Athens on a Saturday night. I mean, just little things. I mean, just little things that pop out. He's not a lot of freshmen pop out in this league, and he popped out. I mean, did it with the ball in his hands. And Josh Chappell's a smart guy. I'm not surprised that he's getting a look over there.
The Tennessee football continuing spring practice, not this week on spring break, but 4 in the books. They'll come back, continue with full pads next week. And, of course, we'll have coverage right here at Volquest.com.